Getting accuracy in our perspective angles is often one of the hardest issues that artists face when they're drawing architecture. In this video, let me explain to you what I think is the fastest and easiest way we can overcome this, that we can improve our ability to draw our perspective angles accurately. But I think it's the sort of method which really is best shown with some illustrations. So first, we need a drawing that we can use as one that needs some help with its perspective angles. And so here I am drawing the Arc du Carrousel in Paris. Now, I think it's a very interesting structure. I think it's beautifully elegant in so many ways. Not necessarily straightforward to draw. This is a quick drawing with a 0.1mm pen. That took me 15 minutes to do. And when I finish it, we will use it to consider the issues and to show the method for improving our perspective. And then after that, I will redraw it, hopefully with an improved accuracy in the perspective, and we'll do the same exercise again with that second drawing. But it really does make more sense to have something that's a little more out, shall we say, at the start. Let me say though, there are many aspects with this faster sketch that I actually enjoy, I think work better than in the more finished second drawing, which took me closer to 45 minutes, so almost 3 times as long. That was also drawn with a 0.1mm pen as well. So just finishing the details here. And as you watch me finish it, you might like to ask yourself, what are the obvious perspective issues that I can see? And would I be happy with this drawing if it were mine? Or would I think I can do better than that? So it's a bit tricky with all these figures at the bottom. It can be challenging with a architectural structure when we can't access the ground level lines easily because of people, because it is a fairly important line visually in many ways, even when it's obscured. Now just finishing some of the details here, and we're done. Let's put it to the test. When I take on a drawing student, one of the first things I do is ask to see some of their drawings, but also to see the reference photos that they use to draw them. And as part of that, I place the reference photo and the drawings side by side and consider various things. But if relevant, one of the things I always do first is to showcase the perspective angles and to see how accurately they've captured them. So the top of the Arc du Carrousel is that line there. In my drawing, how carefully have we aligned this? Now, these lines should be parallel because the angle should be the same. And usually at this point, I'm saying to the student, how did this happen? What were you thinking? How can it be so far different? And trust me, they are often this different from each other, or even more. It's not just the top line though. There are other lines in our drawing. Here we have one, this decorative section here, and here we have it here. And again, parallel lines are nowhere near parallel. If we go down to the very bottom here, we can see that this angle in fact goes upwards in the other direction. What happens to our line here? We can't really see, but it's pretty much straight across. In fact, there's a lot of pretty much straight across lines and then just a very slight increase as we go up. What about the other side? The top angle is that. And again, these lines are going to meet. If we look at this angle down here, the lower one, that's not as big a difference, but this one is nowhere near how it should be. Now, you might be saying, well, okay, the perspective may not be accurate there, but it's a nice drawing. And look, there are elements about it I quite like, even though it was a quick gestural drawing. The biggest problem is that because we haven't got these angles correct, in fact, we've got very few angles at all, it's as if we're almost looking at the front of this straight on. Not quite, but almost. Now, the problem is that these sections that we see inside the arch we've drawn them more accurately for how they are in the photo, which means they look the way they would look if the perspective angle was at a much greater angle than front on. So in this one, where the front gives the appearance that we're more front on, but what we see through here and here give the impression that we're much more to one side and that the front of the arch is moving away from us, we get an inconsistency visually between this and this. And if we want our drawings to come across as looking real, then we need to keep this consistency. Can I suggest that what we need to do if we draw architecture is, after we have finished every drawing, that we get our strips of coloured cardboard, and that's all these are, a folder that's been sliced up with a box cutter, and we line them up and preferably tape them down so they don't move around, so that they're on a straight line, so to speak. And then we measure the angles on one, and then we find that corresponding architectural detail on the other, the tops of the capitals of the columns in this case, and we see, are the lines parallel as we want or not? Now, if they're not, we can immediately see how far out they are. And of course, it's possible we could make the lines too steep. Mistakes can go either way, but we want to be accurate in line with our reference if we're trying to create a sense of realism in what we're drawing. This just needs a few moments to do. It's not always easy because it's so confronting. But if we want to learn what's wrong with the angles we draw from what we see, this will show it to us so clearly, so quickly, and so effortlessly. And what this means is, whether I redraw this particular scene again or not, I'm reminding myself now before I start my drawings that I have to pay more attention, that I tend to make the angles not enough or maybe even too much. Or I make too many horizontal down below instead of only one horizontal line which is on eye level. I do lots of parallel lines, or maybe I do parallel angled lines, which also shouldn't be there. So let's now redraw this again very quickly, and we'll measure the angles with a greater focus now on getting these angles correct. As we start the second time, now this will appear to be much faster because it's almost in the same time, but the real time was 3 times as fast. So you'll need to pay attention. If you want to watch me draw this more slowly, you can use the cog icon to slow this speed down to half, which brings it much closer to what I was doing. But if you notice, you'll see me use my pen numerous times to either measure the angles or, more likely, to cross-check my measurements of the angles. So I will often put a dot where I think, if you like, the furthest point or one of the furthest points of an angled line should be from my starting point. And then I can use my pen then to measure the angle between the dot and its starting point and compare that with the angle in the reference. And if it's not right, I can easily just move the dot up or down. And of course, the dot's not going to be particularly noticeable at the end. So clearly, I've taken on board the fact that the upper levels of the arch weren't angled enough, and that the middle ones flattened out too quickly. And so I've been able to concentrate now on what I know was a weakness in the first drawing. Now, when we're redrawing that same drawing, that's pretty obvious and more straightforward. But as I said, over time, we will notice that we make the same perspective mistakes, that we have the same tendency to go too shallow or too long, too high, whatever. Get the foreshortening wrong, whatever the mistakes we make, if we pick them up after every drawing, for our next drawing, we have a focus and intent and some technical skills that are going to help us sort it out more. That will help us get the lines right the first time. Now, I got the angles correct in this. We will measure them in a moment. What I didn't get right was this top section. I took it up too high, and it took me a little while to work out what was looking different I was assuming it was the angles and I kept measuring them. And then I realized, no, it's about 8 or 9 millimeters too high, this top section, which makes it appear heavier and higher and makes the angles appear not quite right. But we'll measure it. And of course, if I were going to draw this again, I would know to watch out for the height of this top bit more carefully. But let's measure it again using the same method and see if we've improved or not, and then see what knowledge or information we have to take with us to our next drawing. So at some stage, I've now had a second go using the feedback I gave myself using my strips about the accuracy of the perspective. And I've had a stronger focus on exactly what I'm wanting to work on in this drawing. And the question is, how do our angles line up? So let's look at the top of the Corinthian columns, the tops of the capitals, because that was a problem line. I'll just put this the other way. That's from the top to the... Just trying to equalize some of the... And while that's not exact, it's a lot closer than we were, probably close enough for something we're just glancing at in that way. What if we take this uppermost angle on the top of the arch? And again, we measure ours. And again, it's a fairly accurate catch of the angle. What if we go lower down? What if we go to this ground level line? It's a bit harder to get here. Again, it's a lot closer than we were. What if we go on the other side of the arch? What if we take this top line and this one? Probably close enough. It's probably not quite. Probably that would be a better take, but it's pretty close. What about this one under it? Again, that looks okay. What about this line here? And that looks okay. And the fact that something feels not quite the same with the upper level of the arch, we've identified is coming from having gone too high. So that's something that if we consistently do, it's something that we'll recognize because we'll spot it, and then we'll choose to do something about it as much as we can in the next drawing where that occurs. If we compare the two, the scale of the quadriga, I think, is much better in my 15-minute drawing than in my 45-minute. But we don't have the awkwardness with seeing the front from one angle, according to the perspective, a very, very shallow angle, but seeing the inside view from a much steeper angle. We have a consistency here in what's happening. I didn't really angle these lines very happily, did I? Maybe that works a little bit better. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. What do you think? Perspective is such an ongoing issue for people, and yet it's so easy to really check ourselves with 100% accuracy to see how we're going. Find the angle on the reference, and we can just slide the same piece of strip of cardboard along. Why not make a few strips and have a go yourself with your next drawing, doing this self-evaluation. It is the easiest, fastest way to identify exactly what we're not getting right with our perspective angles and to really confront ourselves with whatever errors are creeping into our drawing that we can then address consciously, drawing after drawing, and work out exactly how this looks like to see ends up feeling like to draw so that we get it correct. Look, please hit the like button if this has been helpful. It's so simple, it's so quick, and while it can dent our ego a little bit, we're learning to draw. This is such a powerful way to learn to do perspective accurately and much more easily. But however your perspective's looking, whatever you're drawing, however it turns out, whether it's in 10 minutes or 45 minutes, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.